Hi, this is Jim Steinmeyer. Welcome to the August 2025 issue of Genii Magazine. This is Genii Speak, and it's a chance to talk about what you're going to find inside the magazine this month. Um, this was a fun magazine to put together. I haven't even seen the finished result yet. We're recording this and giving you a preview of what you're going to see. But we can tell already from our editors and from our proofreaders and from the people that were involved in it that they've had a lot of fun with the features in this magazine and with the stories. There's lots of great magic. There are lots of great philosophical discussions, really interesting ideas and inspiring ideas about how magic is being used and what's happening in the world of magic. Our cover story, as you've probably noticed, a beautiful photograph and an engaging photograph at the beginning of Zachary Bellamy's work. Zachary Bellamy is a Paris-based photographer who is in the middle of an amazing art project of recording images, portraits of magicians, beautiful portraits that are done in a kind of Hollywood style. As he explains, and he explains the background to that, he explains what he's trying to do. And as much as any artist can explain to you how they do it, he tries to put that formula together for you and explain what is happening in Studio Noir, those beautiful black and white images of Zachary Bellamy. And of course, the story is supported by a number of those amazing images that the photographer supplied to us. Our second feature is called Can You Teach Me That? Inauspicious title and an amazing feature. Don't miss it. Again, the people who were involved in the magazine, when they read it, all comment on how amazing and inspiring this story is. It was written by Vanessa Armstrong. It's about the work of Kevin Spencer. I've known Kevin for years as a magician and an illusionist. At the end of this, we'll talk to him about this story, and you'll have a chance to meet him. And between that article and a chance to meet Kevin Spencer, it will inspire you. You will find this an amazing look at how magic is being used today in education and for special needs kids with disabilities. And then finally, closing the circus is a story about Charlie Wynn's pig. Paul Heller is back, our historian, writing an amazing story about a performing pig from up in the Northeast. It's a great little story of Americana. In it, he manages to do something that very few others have done, writing about this phenomenon, which is he explains how it was done. He explains the historical antecedents and how this animal was trained and why there was an element of deception in all of this. You'll enjoy that article, and it's a lot of fun, and it's inspired jokes through the magazine as well. Joshua J. is here with Blake Voigt, coming up with Piece of Magic. You will love it. It's going to be hard for you to not run out right away and have the pieces of this made and start using it. It's a really, really great piece of mentalism, very showy and an amazing effect. Dan White is here with an amazing trick. Adam Elbaum is back with a really brilliant, perfectly described, perfectly worked out card routine in his style. And of course, Richard Kaufman is describing in Magicana, as good as it gets, a trick by Mike Skinner, a beautiful piece of card magic by Mike Skinner, and describes it perfectly so that you can pick up a deck of cards and start learning it. In the back of our magazine, it always makes me hesitate when I say in the back of our magazine. One of our columnists told us with the first issue that he had friends who were readers and long-time Genii readers. And when they got to the back ads, he discovered that they had just closed up the magazine and tossed it, thinking that once you get to the ads in the back, there's nothing else there. I hope we've proven to you that no longer applies in the new Genii. Once you get to the back ads, there's plenty in the back. There's a really great section of varied and inspiring and fascinating stories. And this month is a great example of that. Just past our workshop, which is Sarah Crasson and Pete McCabe, and Dr. Matt Pritchard, who tells you how to construct a ghost making device of your own out of cardboard and a cell phone. Just past that section, you'll see some ads. And then if you keep turning, you'll get to our perspectives. And you're going to start with Jim Hagee's column, which combines a little bit of history with a little bit of philosophy about magic and understanding magic and how you talk about magic with laymen. Ben Wynn put together a really wonderful short interview with Teller about the old magic shops of Philadelphia, what he remembered of them, what he remembered of the dealers, and what we're losing in terms of magic shops not being around anymore. A great little photo essay of something we call the Spring Snake Symphony. It's Eric Buss's trick. If you've never seen him do it, this is a close second, and be sure to click on the link and watch a video of it. And then a great, great short interview with Steve Cohen. Steve Cohen, who has plenty to say about a lot of different subjects. He sat down with Noah Levine. Steve had ginger ale, not coffee. And then he talked about some of the magic he's been doing and his approaches to his chamber magic show. One more other feature in our section on magic tricks and reviews is a feature on Misdirections Magic Shop in San Francisco and Joe Pond. Joe has lots to say. Misdirections is a favorite, of course, of magicians all around the world, particularly in San Francisco. Joe's been an inspiration to all of those performers up there, and it's a great chance to get to know him, and we hope it inspires you next time you pass through San Francisco to go out of your way. They're right downtown. Go out, but find Misdirections and spend some time with Joe Pond. Thanks very much. Right after this, I say hello to Kevin Spencer, and you'll get a chance to meet him, and you'll hear what he's been up to, and we know you'll find it to be a great story. We'll see you all here next month in September. Thanks. Welcome to the August issue of Genii Magazine, August 2025. I'm here via Zoom with Kevin Spencer, and it occurs to me that I've had all sorts of fascinating conversations over the years with Kevin Spencer about magic, but that was an earlier career for me and an earlier career for Kevin. And I don't think either of us would have dreamt that we would be sitting here now talking about this subject, least of all Kevin. But I did have to say, Vanessa Armstrong did this amazing article, which is called Can You Teach Me That? It's a great profile of Kevin. Kevin hasn't seen it yet, actually. We're doing this interview. But of course, you've seen it in Genii. And I know enjoyed it. I mean, we even our proofreaders have read it and said, oh my gosh, what an amazing article. I've never dreamt that this was part of this. So it's really inspiring on many levels. But I just have to back up a second, because as I was reading it and as we were working on the piece, it reminded me so much of Kevin's earlier career. And sometime we have to do this as a story. I mean, I know this is now like a lifetime ago for you, Kevin, but we have to talk to you and Cindy about doing Theater of Illusion and your experiences with that. And I remember your stories about establishing the Performing Arts Center market, which is a nice way of saying it, establishing the Performing Arts Center, like it was simple. And these amazing stories about the resistance you got and how you stayed at it and how you kept it up. And all of those things were paralleled in this story. It's really interesting.
It is really interesting to see how all that our previous career so aligns with what we were doing, what we are doing now.
Completely different, and yet the same sort of challenges. I know.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me that, you are really a stubborn guy, number one. And then you have that ability, once it's all kind of done, to have everybody go, oh, that was all so logical and so simple. And I was reading, the people that were working with you going, well, of course, this is a great idea. This is a great idea. Why weren't we thinking about doing this? So it's a great story about how much effort is involved in pushing that rock up the hill and over the top, and then once how it lands and how everybody's amazed by the result of that. So I'm sorry, my long introduction to this. You'll read about it in Genii, but talk a little about what you've been doing the last 10 years and this amazing story about how you fell into it through your own problems and disabilities and what your experience was with that.
So it does, sometimes it seems like I was on a stage yesterday.
Yeah.
So much of our early career as a performer just seems so fresh. And then there are times that I look at it and I go, oh my gosh, that was a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you said 10 years. It was 10 years ago, 10 years ago in May, that we did our last performance, our last public Theater of Illusion performance in Chicago, wheeled all the equipment back out. The crew loaded it into the truck, And they all got in the truck and bus and drove back to Virginia. And I got on an airplane and flew to Flint, Michigan to do the work I'm doing now.
Right.
And it it just seems like a dream. And I absolutely love the work I'm doing now. So it's all of my work now still uses magic. I still get to do the thing that I love, but
Right.
now I just get to do it in a really, really cool way. I get to use magic tricks as a way to improve the lives of people with disabilities, whether that's through a therapeutic approach like occupational or physical therapy, whether that's in an educational approach like in a classroom, in a special education classroom, using a magic trick to teach both academic content to kids as well as functional goals that are part of their individual education plan as
Mhm.
a special education student. Being able to share this with teachers who are desperately looking for ways to re-engage and motivate their students in the classroom, and watch teachers really get excited again about walking into the classroom and teaching these kids.
Yeah.
uh, it's pretty phenomenal.
It,
I don't know that I've yet wrapped my head fully around what
yeah.
it
I
is that I
mean,
get
you
to do.
you are really, doing a lot with it. We'll talk a little about that, including just producing a book, a textbook. I say a textbook because it's really aimed at teaching educators what you're doing, how to do it themselves, how they can take advantage of these situations and this knowledge and this experimentation that you've done. And you went since 10 years, you went back to school
Yeah.
and really jumped into this feet first with a master's degree and a PhD in education in special ed. So, it's very interesting because you talk a little in the article about how you realize that this has to really be science.
Yeah.
This couldn't be kind of anecdotal. Isn't this fun teaching kids this? That's happened in the past, and that's been wonderful and inspiring. But this has to get to another level, and what you had to do to get it to that level. We talked to Gavin Jenkins. Vanessa talked to Gavin Jenkins in the course of the article, and you mentioned him. Um, he really was the skeptic who was won over with this. It's apparent to me, the academic who probably thought this wouldn't really work, and then
Yes.
was in the middle of it. Yeah. So he's down in Alabama.
He is. So I have this really cool role at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. I am an associate professor by special appointment,
Right.
which basically means I get to come in and spend time with these first year graduate students and expose them to the concepts of using magic as the legitimate therapeutic activity, something that's right along with every other approach they might use in working with the patient. And of course, uh, you just mentioned so much of this has to be grounded in science if I want the academic world to accept it. And so I spent a lot of time aligning the theoretical framework of using a magic trick with all of the theories that are supported by occupational therapy, the model of human occupation, motor learning theory, social learning theory, the incentive theory of motivation. Why does magic work? Not just, I mean, it's cool. You and I know
Yeah.
that. You teach a magic trick to a kid, especially a kid with a disability or an adult with a disability, and you watch them light up, and then they go, and my favorite words, they go, I did it, I'm a magician too. And it's like, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And that's great, but anecdotally that's great. What just happened to this kid that we can measure? And as much as I think when I first got into this, that was the thing that troubled me the most as an artist. How do we measure the impact that we have on somebody's lives? Artists are very subjective. We're very emotional. It's all of that kind of qualitative approach
Now it's
to
almost like if
data.
you measure it, it isn't there.
It's exactly
Right.
right,
Right.
exactly right. And now all of a sudden I was having academics say to me, well, how do you know this works?
Right.
How do you measure this works? What do you know? So I think one of the first big things I had to do was sit down and explore exactly what happens when you learn a magic trick. And we basically narrowed it down to five things, which just to me, sometimes you just get rid of the mystery of the magic and you just have to get kind of to the nuts and bolts.
Right.
But I know in my work, when I work with these kids or these adults, teaching them a magic trick, we work on cognition. They have to be able to memorize the steps and sequence them in the right order. They have to be able to organize their tasks and their props. So it's all this cognitive stuff that comes into play. It's their motor skills. We know that we're improving their motor abilities because they have to be able to manipulate the prop. So everything we do in this program, every trick in the program is designed so it can be made more difficult or easier based on the motor abilities of the client. Then it's about communication, both receptive and expressive communication. They have to be able to listen to me to learn the trick, but then they also have to be able to communicate to perform the trick. So it's that receptive communication when they're learning and that expressive communication when they're performing. And then it's all about social skills, which is a huge challenge for kids on the autism spectrum, which is probably the group that I work the most with.
Right.
Encouraging them. Now that you've taught, I have this really cool study happening right now that is, can we improve the social cognition of adolescents on the autism spectrum by teaching them magic tricks? Are we going to help them become more open and more communicative? Are we going to give them an opportunity to kind of come up to somebody and say, hey, can I show you a magic trick? Because as you've taught me so much over the years, magic has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Conversation has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So we can use a magic tricks to teach that social concept of conversation has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then the last thing about a magic trick, it's all about creativity or flexible thinking. We do not teach our kids with disabilities flexible thinking. We teach them by rote. They memorize everything in the classroom. We put them through 12 or 14 years of school, and then we turn them out into the world with no critical thinking skills, no problem solving skills, no ability to think creatively or flexibly. And we say, go be successful.
Right.
You can't do that. But with a magic trick, it's so easy to teach them. What happens if I'm doing this trick and I miss a step and now I recognize this trick's not going to work?
Right.
What am I going to do? I can't just throw it down and walk away because I want to be successful as a performer in fooling you with this trick. So they learn to backtrack, to pick up the step that they missed, and then to move forward and be successful with the trick. So we teach them those critical thinking, problem solving skills in a really fun way. All of the stuff that I just talked about, they're learning it without actually recognizing that they're learning it.
Yeah.
It just becomes natural for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Gavin talked a little about that, about it being, therapy that it's kind of stealth therapy, I think is the word.
Stealth therapy. Yeah. That's his favorite way to describe this. It's stealth therapy.
Yeah.
It's
And
therapy.
it's all safe also. In other words, they're not really in the middle of, this is not about having important conversations or applying for a job or keeping track of something. This is the analogy of it. It's a magic trick. If it doesn't work right away, if they fail with it, that's all safe. That's all an opportunity to come
Because they shouldn't know how to do a magic trick.
Right.
There's no expectation that they're going to get it right. And so because there's no expectation, failure becomes acceptable.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that makes magic so special is it's different from all of the other performing arts. You can sing for yourself. You can dance for yourself. You can draw for yourself. You can paint for yourself. You can do all those things for yourself. You can't do magic for yourself. If you try to do magic for yourself, it's just you sitting at the table doing a series of ridiculous moves.
Right.
It's not magic until you show it to somebody. And in that moment, everything you've just worked on blows somebody's mind and they go, oh my gosh, how did you do that?
Right.
And I think that's that element of magic that makes it so incredibly powerful in the world of rehab and education, because there is no expectation they should do it. So their failure is acceptable. And then when they master it, it's just that I watch kids do this every day where they'll be like this and then they'll perform. And all of a sudden their chest and their shoulders go up. And when you ask them to introduce themselves, and I always tell them, okay, you're going to perform this trick. What's your magic name going to be? And I'm working with kids, some kids who are really severely, profoundly disabled.
Right.
And you've got to come up with a word that describes you as a magician. Who are you? and they'll come out with, like, I'm the brilliant Amanda,
Right.
or I'm the amazing Alexander. And you just watch everything about who they are change when they describe themselves as this performer.
Right.
It's awesome. Yeah.
I mean, I know we talked about in the article, it describes turning this into kind of science so that it can be translated to educators and to scientists. But putting on your hat from 10 years ago, of being on stage and being a magician, what are the surprises of watching these kids learn this? I mean, from a magic point of view, from a magician point of view, what did you not realize what was going on in your own shows? Or what
Oh,
what the latent magic was there that we don't take advantage of as magicians, that we don't really understand.
you know what? I think the one thing that I've learned in all of this is the most effective magic is about connection. It's the connection you make with your audience. It's the connection you make with these kids or adults that I'm working with. Otherwise, it's just a trick. It's
Right.
just this thing you throw up on the stage or just this thing you do in a classroom. But when you've got this real connection with your audience or this real connection with the kids or adults that you're working with, the magic takes on a completely different appeal and a completely different understanding. I think as performers, and I get to see this a lot when I work with kids or adolescents who have experienced trauma, which
Mhm.
is another population that I work with a lot.
Right.
When you teach them a magic trick, and at first this becomes kind of this distraction technique, right? We want to get them to focus on something else. But every magic trick needs a story. The story is what makes it yours. And I can be sitting down with 5 or 6 kids in a therapy session and teach them all the same trick and say to them, how are you going to perform this? Because the way you perform it is what's going to make you different from the way he performs it. So what's your story? Tell us what your story is going to be. The magic is secondary to your story.
Right.
Connect with me and tell me your story using the magic. And it is incredible to me to watch these kids. I a lot of work with veterans with PTSD
Mhm.
who, when they perform this crazy magic trick and they tell their story, so many times the object or the moment of their trauma becomes really clear in the story that they tell. And for many of them, it's the first time they've been able to say, oh my gosh, this is my story. I
Right.
remember working with a group of homeless veterans in Tampa, and those two words should never go together, like homeless
Right.
veterans. That just should not be a thing. And I was coming in to do magic, and of course, to get these homeless veterans in, they brought in pizza. And so I come into this room, and there's like all these veterans all on the perimeter. Nobody in the middle, nobody at a table. They're all on the perimeter. So I'm walking around introducing myself to these guys, and finally, this one guy looks at me and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm going to do some magic for you guys tonight." And he says, "Yeah, but why? Why would you come and want to hang out with us?" And I said, "Well, I just think this is going to be a pretty fun night for you guys." He goes, "Yeah. How much are they paying you?"
Yeah.
That was his question back to me. How much are they paying you?
Right.
I said, "Well, they're not really paying me anything. I'm just here to kind of have some fun with you guys tonight." So, now here's all the tension in the room. So I get up and I say at the very beginning, how many of you came for the pizza? Every hand in the room came up in the air.
Right.
It's like, yeah, we're here for the pizza. Because could you just speed this along? And then all of a sudden, now realize you really have to bring your A game
You
because
got to be better than pizza.
you got to be better than pizza because your entire credibility is online right now.
Right.
I did my first trick, and I watched them kind of lean into me. And then a couple more tricks. And then I said, I think I really would like to teach you guys something. So, still on the perimeter of the room, and they learned this first trick. And then slowly they got in these, as they learned their next trick, they got in these little groups and started working with each other in these groups, people they didn't know,
Right.
just kind of sharing in these groups. And before I knew it, all of these groups had moved to the center of the room. And now it was time to perform. And I asked one of them to come up and tell us his story. And it was that silly little linking paperclip trick,
Mhm.
right? Paperclips on the bill. And so he gets up and he performs, and his entire story is connected to his war experience. And that triggered everybody else to share their story. It was the most phenomenal night. I remember leaving, and I had this guy come up to me afterwards, and he came up from behind and he touched me on the shoulder. And I turned around and he said, I know I'm dirty and I know I smell, but can I give you a hug? I said, sure. So he gave me a hug and he said, I've been in therapy for 5 years, just trying to deal with all of this. What we did tonight, gave me a breakthrough. I finally feel like I can get a handle on the trauma that's been haunting my life. And it's because I got to spend time with these amazing people over pizza and magic. So, and I don't know, it's just a simple little trick, but
Yeah.
the power of that simple little trick comes to connection. It's all about connection.
Yeah. No, it's, as magicians, we have different ways of saying that that's all integrated into the literature, about finding your own personality and connecting with the audience and, making it personal and doing all that stuff. But it's translating to exactly what you're saying. And of course, what you're doing is hotwiring that because you're dealing directly with strangers. I mean, it's an amazing story that you just told. Those people are strangers at one point, and 30 minutes later or an hour later, it's completely different. And
Yeah.
boy, that is as hard as it gets. But that's a demonstration of how this works. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
And magic just taps that crazy curiosity that's inside every single one of us that you want to kind of lean in to it a little
Yeah.
bit. And I think that gives us such an amazing opening to take advantage of that curiosity and that willingness to lean into you. It gives me this amazing privilege of
Yeah.
being able to connect and share and pull out of them
Yeah.
whatever it needs to be pulled.
Yeah. It's really amazing. And I hear this, I've talked to you about this over the last few years. And I'm hearing from other people as well who are involved in similar projects that, people are seeing that something different is happening with magic. Um,
Yeah.
not to make it too grand for our little world of magicians, but that is literally what I'm hearing is that it's not exactly the same. That combination of how you're learning, the combination of skills, I guess the feeling of having a secret knowledge is part of it, is an
Hmm.
element. The fact that there's part of what you're imparting right away is a secret. The fact that it will quickly translate to a performance, that it changes your status with the group that you're with. All those things are like they're not trivial. They're really different about what's happening in this
I
process.
see it happen with these kids with disabilities in the special education classrooms at the end of the hallway that nobody ever sees. But now all of a sudden they're in the cafeteria and they're making their fork float in the cafeteria,
Yeah.
or they're doing a magic trick. And I remember when we first launched the Hocus Pocus curriculum,
Yep.
and I had a school in Tulsa, Oklahoma that was kind of piloting the program. And I had a seventh grade special education teacher in a self-contained classroom. So she only taught special ed kids all day. None of these kids were cognitively able to be mainstreamed in another class. So every week they learned a magic trick. Every week they focused on some academic content connected to that. Every kid kept their wizard's book of secrets where they put the directions in and then they wrote their story out. So we're working on, grammar and writing and sentence structure and storytelling and all of those things. And then about 3 or 4 weeks in, all these kids are now doing magic tricks in the cafeteria. And these were all seventh graders. The eighth graders, by like week 5, week 6, the eighth graders are knocking on the special education teacher's door. Because we did this on Monday. It was Magic Monday was the day they learned the trick and they worked on it all week. These eighth graders are wanting to know if they can come in for Magic Monday and learn these magic tricks with the kids. And so it changed the perception of who these students were in the school. Because no kid is going to want to knock on a special education door and say, "Hey, can I come in and hang out with your
Right.
kids?"
Right.
So everything about what happened with the overall personality of that school just shifted because 20 special ed students were doing magic tricks in the dining hall.
Right. Right. And everyone relates to that on a completely different level and an unexpected level. And
Yeah,
what you're doing is empowering those people to have that specialness for a little bit. And then where does it go from there? And obviously what you're saying is that it kicks other doors open, which is the amazing
yeah.
thing. Yeah. It's interesting. You're in the article, Vanessa mentioned that you've done a book, which I was joking with Kevin before we started that it's got such a great title, just teach like a magician, that every magician is going to say, I've got to buy this book. And you know what? Maybe you should. I mean, it's an amazing story. But I just want to warn Kevin, we want to warn you that it's a textbook. And
Yes.
I was joking with Kevin. I said they open it up and find charts. And he went, oh yeah, lots of charts. Lots of charts. So it's an
Yeah.
academic book. It's about this process, and it's about how these educators are now translating this into the form. But it's a great analogy, teach like a magician, of how those skills are being used in this way.
What we did is we took the word magician and made it into an acronym. So every letter
Oh, that's great.
stands for a research-based practice that should be a part of every learning environment.
Right.
So you look at each one of those and you kind of bring them all together. And from a magician's performance perspective, I think there are some things in there that um, translate over to what we do as performance. So, like the M is all about motivation, whether that's student motivation or teacher motivation.
Mhm.
The A is for active learning, you know, keeping your students actively involved. The G, I think, speaks loudly to magicians because it's about goal directed instruction.
Mhm.
But when you translate that over to like magicians, it's more about the goal. Why am I doing this trick in my show? What purpose does this trick serve? The I is about imagination. The C is all around creativity and curiosity in the classroom. So those first five are all about technique.
Right.
But the last three, the IAN, are all about traits as a teacher and I think as a performer that we should develop. So the second I is all about immersion, being fully immersed with your students in the classroom, which is difficult and challenging and exhausting.
Yeah.
But I think in order to establish connection as performers, we have to be immersed with our audiences when we're on the stage. And what that looks like is different for every performer, but I still think that being immersed with your audience is so important if you want to build that connection with them uh, so that they remember what you've done after they leave the theater. The A is all about affirmation, positive affirmation.
Right.
Our students need to be affirmed in what they're doing, not just constantly sort of saying, don't do that, pointing out the good things that they do. And then the last thing is the N is about natural rapport, building a rapport with your students. That's very different than immersion. Immersion is something that you make a decision that you're going to do. I'm going to be immersed with my audience, my students today. The rapport takes time. You don't build rapport. You don't come in and say,
Right.
today I'm building rapport.
Right.
That takes time to do that. So those 8 research-based concepts kind of wrapped up into what it means to be an effective teacher in the classroom.
And they really are analogous to what we talk about, as magicians, when we really analyze it. A lot of those points are the essence of what a performance is and what we're ticking all those boxes mentally to make sure
Yeah.
that's part of it. It's interesting to me because you're clearly one of our interviews talked about you coming in and you kind of being a rock star in this world, and that the kids are anticipating it and they're waiting for you to come back and they're excited by it. I'm just wondering, how does that translate to a teacher doing it? In other words, is it you have a specialness because you're coming from the outside. You're a magician. They all anticipate that this is going to be special and different. If it's just my teacher doing this, if I dial all that down a little bit, do we still get that experience? How do you overcome that now that you're teaching others to do this?
So one of the things that we've discovered when the teacher takes on this role as the performer,
Right.
Magic Monday is what we try to push in the
Sure.
classroom. When the teacher takes on that role, it shifts the way the students actually look at and respond to the teacher. The teacher changes their character of who they are in the classroom. And it really helps them build much deeper connections with their students than what they were able to have before. Students start to look at them in a different way. And I think one of the things that I encourage teachers is don't be afraid to take a risk. And even if you do the trick wrong, do the trick. You ask your students to do this every day. Every day you say to your students, come up here and solve this math problem on the board, or come up here and read this book out loud. We ask our kids to take a risk every day. And when I'm doing like a professional development training for teachers and they've learned some of this stuff, and I'll say, Mary, come on up and show us this. Oh, no, 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 I'm not ready for that. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Did you do this to your kid today? You probably did this to a student today.
Right.
And they're like, oh, yeah, come on up. And then all of a sudden, they get this different perspective of what they're asking their students to do. The other thing that happens is when the trick doesn't work, it gives the students an opportunity to see their teacher as a human being
Right.
and to go, oh, it didn't work for the teacher, which gives them even more permission not to get it right the first time.
Right.
We put so much pressure on students anymore to just get it right the first time. I have actually worked with typically developing kids in fourth and fifth grade. I remember working with a kid who completely lost his ability to talk because he put himself under so much stress over the standardized testing that he was going to have to do. He just became so focused that he just he
Couldn't move
just
past
couldn't
that. Yeah.
couldn't get past that. And teaching him a magic trick, I taught him for a week, and it was like, all right, so now you have to tell a story. And his eyes were like, whoa. And he started tapping his foot. Like he would get up to perform and he'd start tapping his foot. And to the rhythm of his foot, he would tell me his story.
Yeah.
And so about Wednesday, his mom came to me and she goes, that is such a great strategy that you taught him. I said, I didn't teach that to him. He came up with that on his own because he wants to be successful with the magic trick and he wants to tell his story. So this is the way that he could do that. And by Friday, the tapping was gone and he was right back into the natural flow of being able to get up and perform and tell his story.
Wow. It's amazing. It's a great, great story. It's I know our readers will love it. And thanks for talking us through this because it's a great chance to meet you. We talked about it when we started this, and I talked to Vanessa, and I said, you'll see from Kevin his enthusiasm, which is the way he was on stage with magic. I think you've done an amazing job of translating this to a whole nother market, the academic market,
Thank you.
convincing them of something that they might not have believed. We always have the dirty work in magic. I always come back to this, and my theory, coming through the pandemic was, magicians are always the ones who get the tough job. Could you do a show over Zoom and make people feel like they're engaging personally in a show? Is there any way we could do that as a theater company? Is it possible that you could do? And of course, magicians go, all right, okay, we'll do it. We'll do it. And
And can you
they
do
put it
that?
all
Can you
together.
do?
And yeah, they do it for no money. They do it under duress.
Yeah.
They put these productions together. And that's always kind of historically the way is the hardest job, kind of entertainment wise, gets translated to something first like magic, and people figure out how to do it. And then, as I said, then as soon as the theater companies came back, they went, I'm sorry, who are you again? You're a magician?
Yeah.
Why do we want you here?
You know
But
what? And the big thing was like, not only do we want you to do a magic show on Zoom, we want it to be audience interactive.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Well, that was the amazing thing about it was that, magicians were able to make it feel tremendously like this was an interactive thing. And that was what everyone was longing for, was being there as a group.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because I think maybe part of it is too, as magicians, we're not as challenged by those things as other forms are, because we've been involved in so many challenges pushing this across the finish line. But I mean, this
Yeah.
story, what you've been doing, And these examples are really extraordinary and inspiring, and it really takes it to another level. And we're grateful for you doing
Thank
it and
you.
talking about it and telling all of us about it. It's amazing.
I it is crazy to have a second career
Yeah,
that I loved as much or more than my first career.
yeah.
And everything that happened to us in our previous career has contributed immensely in ways that I probably will never fully understand to the success of the program that we have now. Um, all of those connections are just I don't think I would be successful at what I'm doing now if I didn't have that history as a performer
Especially
and all the lessons
especially
we
that
learned.
loading the crate part.
Yes, yes. Carrying around 700 pounds of concrete blocks so that we could walk through a
Oh,
wall.
that's right. Yeah, 700 pounds of concrete blocks for a trick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been great. Thanks so much. We'll keep in
Thank
touch,
you.
and we're anxious to hear about the book and about how it's all going. And like I say, sometime we have to talk about magic, but
Yeah.
traditional magic, because that's another amazing story about how that all happened and how that got into theaters and why that got into theaters and what you found when it did. But yeah,
Yeah.
anyway. So thanks very much, Kevin, and we'll be in
Thank
touch.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the magazine.